The draconian royal palace on planet Pyros Prime gleamed under 3 crimson suns, its obsidian towers reaching toward the stars like giant claws. Within its grandest chamber, Queen Myri stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, her massive scale form casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Her golden eyes stared out at the capital city below, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on a problem that no amount of royal power could solve. "Your Majesty," that makes 37. High Chamberlain Talon's voice echoed in the vast room. The reptilian advisor clutched a data tablet in his clawed hands, his expression tight, with barely concealed frustration. "Governess Crystalia has formally resigned." She cited psychological trauma and property destruction. Queen Myri closed her eyes slowly, a gesture that showed deep weariness. In all her 300 years of life, she had faced wars, political conspiracies, and economic collapse. Yet nothing prepared her for the challenge of raising her son. What did Ruji do this time? The prince used his fire breath to melt her entire collection of crystalline teaching modules, Your Majesty. 3 centuries worth of educational materials, reduced to pools of liquid crystal. When Governess Crystalia protested, he simply laughed and told her he was conducting a scientific experiment on melting points. As if summoned by the mention of his name, a young dragon's roar echoed through the palace corridors. The sound was followed by crashing glass and the rapid footsteps of someone running away in terror. Queen Myri's long tail swept across the floor in agitation, scraping against a marble with a sound like thunder. Crown Prince Ruji was only 200 years old, barely a child by draconian standards. In human years, he would be about 8 years old. His scales were a deep, beautiful crimson color with hints of black running along his spine. His wings were still small, not yet strong enough to carry him through the skies. But it was his eyes that caught everyone's attention, brilliant gold with flecks of orange fire dancing within them. Those eyes held an intelligence far beyond his young age, and a sadness that seemed to weigh heavier than the palace itself. "Send for another governess," Queen Myri commanded, though her voice carried no hope. She had said these same words 36 times before. "Your Majesty, with respect, we have exhausted all qualified candidates in this star system. Word is spread across multiple planets. They are calling Prince Ruji the untamable terror of Pyros." Talon hesitated before continuing, his voice dropping lower. "Some members of the court suggest that perhaps more forceful methods of discipline might be necessary." The queen's head snapped toward him so fast that Talon stepped backward. Smoke trailed from her nostrils, a sign of barely controlled anger. "He is my son, not a wild beast to be broken and tamed." "Of course, Your Majesty. I meant no disrespect." Talon bowed deeply and quickly retreated from the chamber, leaving the queen alone with her thoughts. That evening, after the 3 suns had set and the palace grew quiet, Queen Myri went searching for her son. She found him in his private chambers, surrounded by destroyed furniture and walls blackened by fire. The young prince sat curled in the corner, his small body trembling despite his fearsome appearance. "They all hate me," Ruji whispered without looking up at his mother. His voice was small and broken, nothing like the terrifying roar that had echoed to the palace earlier. Myri approached slowly, carefully settling her massive form beside her tiny son. "They do not hate you, my little star. They fear me. That is the same thing." Ruji's claws scraped nervously against the stone floor, leaving shallow marks. "I only wanted to show Governess Crystalia that I was smart. I wanted her to know that I had already learned everything in those boring modules. I memorized them all in the first week. But when I melted them, she screamed and ran away, just like all the others. Why do you drive them away, Ruji? Tell me the truth." The young prince finally raised his head to look at his mother. Tears glistened in his golden eyes, reflecting the soft glow of the chamber's lights. "Because they always leave anyway, Mother. Every single one of them looks at me and sees a monster, not a person. They see my claws, my fire, my scales. They see danger and power and something to be afraid of. They never see me, just Ruji, who likes reading and wants friends and gets lonely at night." His voice cracked. "If they ever leave anyway, I would rather make them leave first. At least then it is my choice, not theirs." Queen Myri felt her heart break into pieces. She pulled her son close, wrapping a protective wing around his small form. "We will find someone, my precious one. I promise you. Someone who will see you for exactly who you are, brilliant, curious, and worthy of love." But as she held her crying child, Queen Myri wondered if such a person truly existed anywhere in the vast galaxy. Her empire stretched across 47 star systems. She commanded fleets of warships and ruled over billions of beings. Yet she could not find one person capable of understanding her lonely son. The royal library stood silent at midnight, its vast halls filled with knowledge from 1,000 worlds. Janitor Juno pushed his cleaning cart through the aisles, humming an old Earth song his grandmother had taught him. At 43 years old, he had found unexpected peace in these quiet nights, maintaining the palace's forgotten corners where nobility never ventured. Juno had worked at the Draconian Royal Palace for 3 years now. He had come from Earth seeking distance from memories too painful to face. Back home, he had been a teacher, a good one, his students used to say, but that life felt like it belonged to a different person in a different universe. Here, in the palace, he was invisible. The alien nobles walked past him as if he did not exist. The dragon royalty never looked down at the simple human pushing a mop, and that was exactly what Juno wanted. No expectations, no responsibilities beyond clean floors and organized shelves. Just quiet work and quiet nights. Tonight, however, something was different. As Juno moved through the quantum physics section of the library, he noticed a faint glow coming from the restricted area. He approached cautiously, his cleaning cartwheels squeaking softly on the marble floor. What he found made him stop in surprise. A small dragon sat hunched over a massive holographic book, its pages flickering with complex mathematical equations. The dragon was young, barely bigger than a large dog, with crimson scales that shimmered in the blue light of the hologram. His small wings were folded against his back, and his golden eyes squinted at the text with intense concentration and clear frustration. Prince Ruji looked up suddenly, startled by the sound of the cart. His eyes went wide with panic, then quickly narrowed with defensive hostility. "You are not supposed to be here." Juno leaned casually on his mop, completely unbothered by the presence of royalty. "Neither are you, I am guessing. A little late for homework, is it not?" The prince blinked, clearly confused by the casual tone. Nobody spoke to him like this. Nobody treated him as if he were just an ordinary child. I cannot sleep, and these equations do not make any sense." Juno stepped closer, examining the holographic display. His teacher instincts kicked in automatically. Quantum entanglement. Tricky stuff indeed. What part is confusing you? Ruji's hostility wavered, replaced by genuine curiosity. "You can read this? You understand quantum physics. Used to be a physics teacher back on Earth. Long time ago." Juno pointed at a section of the equation with the handle of his mop. "See here? You are trying to solve it in a straight line, but quantum mechanics does not work that way. It is more like, think of it as a dance where both partners are already moving before the music even starts." The young prince's eyes suddenly lit up with understanding. They are connected outside of normal time. The particles know what the other is doing instantly. Exactly right. Juno smiled, the first genuine smile he had worn in years. "You are pretty smart, kid." The word hung in the air like a foreign object. Kid. No one had ever called the crown prince of the Draconian Empire something so simple and ordinary. Ruji felt something strange and warm bloom in his chest. "I am not a kid," Ruji said, puffing up his small chest. "I am Crown Prince Ruji of the Draconian Empire, heir to 47 star systems, future ruler of... And I am Juno, janitor of the 3rd floor, heir to a really good mop and a cleaning cart with one squeaky wheel." Juno's face remained completely deadpan. "Nice to meet you, your highness." Ruji stared at him, his mouth hanging open slightly. Then something happened that he could not control. Fire breath erupted from his mouth, not from anger, but from pure surprise and confusion. The flame shot directly toward Juno. Without even flinching, Juno casually swung his mop in a smooth arc, redirecting the stream of fire into his metal cleaning bucket. The flame sizzled harmlessly inside the container. Juno glanced down at the bucket, then back up at the shocked prince. Well, that is one way to sterilize my equipment. Very efficient, actually. I should thank you. The complete absurdity of the response, the total lack of fear, the matter-of-fact observation, the genuine thanks for nearly being burned alive, broke something loose inside Ruji. A sound bubbled up from deep within him. Unfamiliar and wonderful. Laughter. Real, genuine laughter that came from his belly and echoed through the silent library like music. He laughed until tears ran down his scaled cheeks. He laughed until his sides hurt and his small wings fluttered. He laughed until the crushing loneliness that had been sitting on his chest for months felt just a little bit lighter. The sound traveled through the palace ventilation systems and monitoring equipment, reaching Queen Myri's private chambers where she was reviewing diplomatic reports. Her head snapped up at the sound. She rushed to the security screens, her heart pounding with hope and disbelief. There on the monitor was her son, actually laughing, truly happy, with a human janitor who looked utterly unbothered by the fact that he was having a conversation with a dragon prince. "Who is that human?" she demanded of the night guard on duty. The guard checked his tablet quickly. "That is Juno, Your Majesty. Third-floor maintenance crew. He has worked here for 3 years. Background check shows he was a teacher on Earth before immigrating. No criminal record. Keeps to himself mostly. Bring him to my chambers tomorrow morning first thing. But do not disturb them tonight." Queen Myri's voice was soft but firm. She turned back to the security feed and watched. On the screen, Juno had sat down on the floor beside Ruji, using cleaning supplies as visual aids to explain quantum mechanics. A bottle of cleaning solution became one particle. A scrub brush became another. He demonstrated entanglement by moving them in coordinated patterns. The young prince hung on every word, asking questions, actually engaging with curiosity instead of destructive boredom. For the first time in many months, Queen Myri allowed herself to feel hope. The royal court convened an emergency session, and the chamber buzzed with scandalized whispers. At the center of attention stood Juno in his simple maintenance uniform, looking distinctly uncomfortable among the jeweled nobility. Dragons in elaborate ceremonial armor lined the walls. Reptilian advisors wore robes decorated with precious stones. And there he stood, a human janitor in a gray work suit, holding his cleaning cap in his hands. A human janitor? As companion to the crown prince. Lord Vex, a high-ranking reptilian noble, practically spat the words. His scales were dark green, and his eyes glinted with barely hidden contempt. "Your Majesty, this is unprecedented. It is insulting to our traditions and our empire." Queen Myri sat on a throne, her massive form radiating authority. Her voice cut through the murmurs like a sharp blade. So with my son's laughter, Lord Vex. I had not heard that sound in 6 months until last night. This human has achieved what 37 qualified governesses could not. With all respect, Your Majesty, one evening of novelty does not prove anything. The prince was probably just amused by the strangeness of. Then we will make it official and see what happens. Queen Myri's tail swept across the floor, a gesture that meant the discussion was over. "Juno, will you accept the position of royal companion to Prince Ruji? You will be provided with appropriate quarters, a substantial salary, full benefits, and... Can I keep my janitorial duties?" Juno interrupted suddenly, then immediately winced at his own breach of protocol. Around the chamber, nobles gasped at the rudeness. Queen Myri's eyes widened slightly. Then the corners of her mouth turned up in what might have been amusement. "Why would you want to keep cleaning floors?" "It keeps me grounded, Your Majesty. Makes me remember where I came from. Plus, I genuinely like the work. It is honest and simple. Helps me think clearly." Several nobles exchanged bewildered looks. One whispered loudly enough to be heard, "The human is insane." "Very well. Royal companion with janitorial privileges." The Queen's tone made it absolutely clear the matter was now settled. "Lord Vex, you will oversee his transition and report on the prince's progress. 1 lunar cycle, that is 30 days. If Prince Ruji shows real improvement, Juno remains permanently. Is that understood?" Lord Vex bowed stiffly, his eyes already calculating. "Perfectly understood, Your Majesty." The following days proved chaotic in ways the palace had never experienced. Juno refused to follow traditional royal protocols, much to everyone's horror and fascination. Instead of formal lessons in diplomatic etiquette conducted in the throne room, he taught Ruji how to repair broken equipment in the maintenance bay. Instead of memorizing ancient draconian poetry, they worked through practical problems using everyday objects. Why do I need to know how a plasma conduit works? Ruji asked one afternoon, his claws elbow-deep in machinery beside Juno. His scales were smudged with grease, something that would have given the royal cleaners heart attacks if they had seen it. Because leaders who understand how things actually function make better decisions than leaders who just give orders without knowledge, Juno replied, handing him a molecular spanner. Plus, it is fun. When was the last time you had actual fun? Ruji paused, thinking hard. Last night, with you, in the library. The simple honesty in those words made Juno's chest feel tight. This young dragon had everything. Incredible power, unlimited wealth, prestigious status, and yet he had nothing that actually mattered. No friends, no joy, no one who saw him as just Ruji. The testing began in small ways. During their second meal together, Ruji deliberately unleashed a stream of fire breath across the dining table, watching to see how Juno would react. Juno calmly activated the portable fire suppression device he had quietly positioned nearby earlier, then continued eating his food as if nothing had happened. Nice try. Could you pass the Corinthian vegetables, please? Another day, Ruji hid all his study materials to avoid lessons. Instead of getting angry, Juno turned it into a treasure hunt game, leaving clever clues throughout the palace. When Ruji finally found everything, Juno praised his problem-solving skills and deductive reasoning, making the prince feel proud instead of punished. The biggest test came during their first week together. Ruji drew himself up to his full height, puffed out his chest, and released his most intimidating roar, the kind that sent dozens of governesses running in terror. He added dramatic flame effects and made the windows rattle. It was genuinely impressive and frightening. Juno waited patiently until the young dragon finished, then calmly pulled out a small portable audio analyzer from his maintenance toolkit. He studied the readings with interest. Fascinating. Look at this, Ruji. See this wavelength pattern? You are hitting frequencies that trigger instinctive fear responses in most species, but you're also producing harmonics that cause structural resonance. With proper training, you could literally bring down buildings just with your voice. That is incredible. Ruji's aggressive posture melted instantly into pure curiosity. Really? I could do that. Sound is just physics, and physics does not care about whether you're trying to intimidate someone. It just follows laws of nature. Want to learn more about acoustics and resonance frequencies? Yes. Can we start now? By the third week, the changes were impossible to ignore. Ruji stopped destroying palace property. He engaged eagerly with every lesson Juno created. Palace staff began reporting something even more shocking. The prince was helping younger dragon children with their studies, showing patience and kindness he had never demonstrated before. One servant reported seeing Ruji carefully explaining mathematics to a struggling student, using the same hands-on teaching methods Juno had taught him. Another witnessed the prince defending a smaller dragon from bullies, using words instead of fire. But Lord Vex noticed these changes too, and they made him deeply uneasy. A prince who learned compassion from a human janitor? A future emperor who valued understanding over domination? This went against everything the traditional power structure stood for. He began planning an evaluation that would expose this human's influence as dangerous and end the experiment forever. One quiet evening, as purple twilight painted the sky, Juno and Ruji sat together in the palace garden. The three suns were setting in sequence, creating layers of red, orange, and gold across the horizon. Ruji had been unusually quiet all day. Juno, the young prince's voice was small. Yes, Ruji? Why are you not afraid of me? Everyone else is. Even my own mother sometimes looks at me with worry in her eyes. Juno was silent for a long moment, staring at the distant mountains. When he finally spoke, his voice carried old pain. I lost my wife and daughter 5 years ago. Transport accident on the way to visit family. I have faced real grief, Kid, the kind that makes you wonder if your heart will ever work properly again. You are just a young dragon trying to figure out who you are and where you fit in this big universe. That is not scary. That is just being young and confused, which every person goes through. Lord Vex stood before the assembled royal council, his presentation hovering in the air with devastating clarity. Esteemed members, we gather to evaluate the experiment with the human caretaker. I have prepared a comprehensive assessment to determine if this arrangement should continue. Queen Myri sat on a throne, her massive form perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Beside the council chamber doors, Juno waited with Ruji, both formally dressed for the occasion. The young prince wore ceremonial armor that looked too heavy for his small frame. His claws clicked nervously against the marble floor. Prince Ruji must demonstrate complete mastery of royal protocols, advanced academic knowledge, and diplomatic skills appropriate to his royal station. Lord Vex announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. The evaluation begins now. The heavy doors opened, and they were led inside. Ruji's confident stride from the past weeks faltered when he saw the 12 council members arranged in a semicircle, all staring at him with judgmental eyes. Dragons, reptilians, and other alien nobles sat in elaborate chairs, their faces showing no warmth or encouragement. Juno leaned down and whispered quickly, "Remember what we practiced? You've got this. Just be yourself." But as the evaluation began, Juno realized with growing concern that being himself was exactly what they did not want. The questions came rapid fire, one after another, giving Ruji barely any time to think. Draconian history spanning 10,000 years. Galactic politics involving hundreds of worlds. Military strategy that would challenge a trained general. These were subjects that would be difficult even for a full-grown adult noble. Ruji answered each question mechanically. His responses were technically correct, but his voice was flat and lifeless. The spark that Juno had worked so hard to nurture was disappearing with each passing minute. Adequate, Lord Vex noted coldly after each answer, making even success sound like failure. Now demonstrate proper throne room etiquette. Approach Her Majesty and address her with full formal protocol. Ruji moved forward stiffly, like a puppet on strings. He began the elaborate ritual. The 3 prostrations, the formal greeting in ancient Draconian language, the precise positioning of wings and tail. Every movement was technically perfect and completely empty of any real feeling. Juno watched from the side, his heart sinking. He could see the light dying in Ruji's golden eyes. This was not growth. This was not education. This was breaking a spirit to fit into a mold that was never meant for him. Halfway through the 3rd prostration, Ruji froze. His small body began to tremble. He looked back at Juno with desperate, confused eyes that seemed to ask a silent question. Is this really who I am supposed to be? Is this what you taught me? Juno made a decision that could mean exile, imprisonment, or worse. He stepped forward into the center of the chamber. "Excuse me, I have a question." The council erupted in shocked whispers and angry mutters. Several nobles half rose from their seats. Lord Vex's face flushed dark with rage. "How dare you interrupt these proceedings? Guards, remove this human. What exactly are we evaluating here?" Juno's voice was steady despite his racing heart. He looked directly at Queen Myri. "Are we testing whether Ruji can memorize protocols and perform like a trained circus animal? Or are we evaluating whether he is actually growing into someone who can lead?" "You forget your place, human," another council member shouted. "Maybe I do, but I remember his place." Juno pointed at Ruji. "He is a child who is brilliant and curious and capable of real compassion. These past weeks, I have watched him help younger students who were struggling. I have seen him solve complex problems using creative thinking. I have witnessed him show more emotional intelligence and genuine kindness than half the adults in this room right now." Lord Vex slammed his claw on the armrest of his chair. "This is outrageous. You insult the Royal Council." "I am not insulting anyone. I am just pointing out the truth." Juno turned to face all the council members. "You are not evaluating whether I am good for the prince. You are evaluating whether the prince fits into your comfortable boxes. And those are 2 very different things. You want him to be a copy of every ruler who came before. Maybe what this empire needs is someone different, someone better. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every eye in the chamber turned to Queen Myri, waiting to see if she would punish this incredible disrespect. Then, softly, a young voice spoke up. "Mother?" All attention shifted to Prince Ruji. The young dragon stood straighter than he had all day. His golden eyes blazed with newfound courage that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. "Juno is right. I have been performing for you, not growing. I have been pretending to be someone I am not, because I thought that was what you wanted." Ruji's voice grew stronger with each word. "I will learn everything you wanted to learn. I will become a good leader. I promise you that. But I will not hide who I really am anymore. I will not pretend that I do not need help sometimes, or that I do not have questions, or that I am not still figuring things out." He looked at his mother with complete honesty. "Juno taught me that real strength is not about being perfect. It is about being honest and brave enough to keep trying even when you fail." Queen Myri's stern expression softened. For just a moment, she looked less like an empress and more like a mother seeing her child truly, clearly for the first time. Before anyone could respond, alarm sirens shattered the moment. Red emergency lights flooded the chamber. A guard burst through the doors. His face panicked. "Security breach. Assassins in the palace. They are heading this way." Chaos erupted instantly. Guards rushed to protect the queen. Council members scrambled for cover. The heavy chamber doors exploded inward in a blast of energy, and 3 armored mercenaries stormed inside, their weapons charged and aimed directly at Queen Myri. But they had not counted on one thing. They had not expected the protective fury of a young dragon who had finally found something worth protecting. Ruji moved faster than anyone thought possible. He positioned himself between the attackers and Juno, his small wings spreading wide. His fire breath shot out in controlled streams, not wild and chaotic like before, but precise and purposeful. 2 mercenaries' weapons melted in their hands before they could fire. The third attacker fired an energy blast that glowed white-hot, aimed directly at Ruji's chest. Juno threw himself forward without thinking, pushing the young prince aside. The blast caught Juno squarely in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the floor. Smoke rose from the terrible burn. "No!" Ruji's roar shook the entire palace. The walls cracked. Windows shattered into thousands of pieces. The young dragon's rage manifested as a column of fire so intense and powerful that it turned the attacker's weapon into liquid metal before palace guards could even reach him. As security forces subdued the final assassins, Ruji collapsed beside Juno. Tears streamed down his face, falling onto Juno's injured form. "You are hurt. You are badly hurt because of me. Why did you do that?" 3 months later, the royal palace hummed with unusual activity. Where once there had been rigid formality, now there was purposeful energy. Young nobles from across the Draconian Empire attended the palace's newly established alternative education wing, and visitors came from distant worlds to observe the revolutionary changes that everyone was talking about. At the center of it all, Crown Prince Ruji stood in a large workshop, teaching a mixed class of dragon children and alien students how to build a basic communication device. His movements were confident and patient. His explanations were clear and easy to understand. When a young crystalline student made a mistake and her device sparked and smoked, Ruji did not scold her or make her feel stupid. He simply showed her where the error occurred and encouraged her to try again. "See? The power flow goes this way, not that way. It is an easy mistake. I made the same one last week," Ruji said with a warm smile. The crystalline student's fear melted away, replaced by determination to get it right. Across the workshop, Juno mopped the floors in his usual maintenance uniform, his wounded shoulder now fully healed. Several young dragons had abandoned their projects to help him clean, and he had turned it into an impromptu science lesson about surface tension and how different chemicals interact with various materials. "Your Highness," a palace administrator called from the doorway, her voice nervous. "Your mother requests your presence in the throne room immediately. Representatives from the Galactic Assembly have arrived for your address." The confidence drained from Ruji's face instantly. "The Assembly? That is today? Already?" Juno caught his eye from across the room and gave him an encouraging nod and a subtle thumbs up. "You've got this, kid. Remember what we talked about." 1 hour later, Ruji stood before the full Galactic Assembly. Over 300 representatives from species across known space filled the throne room, some physically present and others appearing as holograms. They commanded armies, controlled vital resources, and shaped the fate of billions of lives. And they were all looking at him. One small dragon prince who had only recently stopped setting things on fire when he got frustrated. His claws scraped nervously against the marble floor. His heart pounded so loudly in his chest that he was sure everyone could hear it. These beings were powerful beyond imagination, and he was supposed to address them, to convince them that the changes in his empire were good. Then he spotted Juno standing at the very back of the chamber, completely out of place in his simple gray maintenance uniform among all the dignitaries wearing elaborate ceremonial robes and armor. The janitor caught his eye and mouthed 2 simple words. "Be you?" Ruji took a deep breath, let smoke curl naturally from his nostrils, and began to speak. "Honored representatives, I know why you are here. You have heard about the changes in our empire. A dragon prince learning from a human janitor. Ancient protocols being challenged. Sacred traditions being questioned. Some of you think it is weakness. Some think it is complete madness." He paused and met eyes with various representatives across the assembly. "I think it is evolution." Murmurs rippled to the crowd like waves, but Ruji continued, his voice growing stronger and more confident with each word. "For 10,000 years, our empire has been built entirely on raw power. The strong rule, the weak serve, and that is just how things are. But power without understanding creates fear. And fear creates rebellion, resentment, and eventually complete collapse." His golden eyes blazed with conviction. "A human janitor named Juno taught me something incredibly simple but powerful. See people as people first, and everything else second. Not humans as weak. Not dragons as monsters. Not crystallines as fragile. Just people trying to figure out their place in this universe." He gestured toward Juno, who looked extremely uncomfortable with suddenly being the center of attention. "This human does not have claws or fire breath. He cannot fly or crush stone with his bare hands. But he has patience when I am difficult. He has wisdom when I am confused. He has courage when I am afraid. He took an energy blast meant for me, without a single moment of hesitation. So tell me, which is actually stronger, the power to destroy or the power to sacrifice for someone else?" A crystalline ambassador stood, her voice chiming like beautiful bells. "Prince Ruji, are you truly suggesting we abandon our traditional hierarchies and power structures entirely?" "No, Ambassador. I am suggesting we add something essential to them. Compassion, understanding, the willingness to learn from those we have always dismissed as lesser or unimportant." Ruji's tail swept across the floor in the ancient gesture of complete sincerity. "Every species here has unique strengths. Dragons have physical power. Crystallines have perfect memory and information processing. Humans have this strange ability to see the best in people who cannot see it in themselves. What if we stopped competing and started cooperating?" A reptilian general, his voice rough with skepticism, spoke up. "Beautiful words, young prince. But how does this philosophy translate to actual governance, to real-world problems? We have already started pilot programs. Mixed species education, where children learn together instead of being segregated by power levels. Diplomatic training that emphasizes understanding over intimidation. Our military is exploring human concepts like winning hearts and minds instead of just winning battles through force." Ruji's conviction rang through his voice. "In just 3 months, we have had 0 diplomatic incidents between our empire and neighboring systems. 0. That has not happened in 300 years. The assembly dissolved into animated discussion. Some voices were deeply skeptical. Others sounded genuinely intrigued. Representatives debated among themselves, while Ruji stood nervously, his claws clicking against the floor. Queen Myri watched her son handle difficult questions with grace and intelligence. He deflected hostility with humor. He had learned from Juno. He addressed serious concerns with thoughtfulness developed through countless conversations over cleaning supplies and late-night study sessions. Finally, the Assembly Chair, an ancient being whose species was older than most galactic civilizations, raised one appendage for silence. Prince Ruji, your proposal is unprecedented in galactic history. We will observe these changes carefully. If they prove genuinely successful, the Galactic Assembly may consider similar initiatives across other systems. But understand this clearly. You and your empire are now being watched by everyone. Do not disappoint us. Ruji stood straighter, meeting the ancient being's gaze without fear. I will try my absolute best not to disappoint you. But if I do fail sometimes, I hope you will give me the chance to learn from those failures and try again better. That is what growth actually is, right? Trying, failing, learning, and trying again with more wisdom. The chair's expression might have been a smile, though it was difficult to tell with that particular species. Your human teacher has taught you well, young prince. After the assembly concluded and the representatives departed, Ruji found Juno in their usual spot, the garden where 3 suns painted the sky in impossible shades of crimson, orange, and gold. How did I do? The young prince asked, suddenly vulnerable again now the performance was over. You were perfect, not because you gave perfect answers, but because you gave honest ones from your heart. Juno patted the ground beside him. Now sit down before you accidentally burn a hole in this nice grass with those nervous flames you are producing. Ruji settled beside his friend, his smaller dragon form still dwarfed even by a seated human. They offered you important positions, did they not? I heard Lord Vex mention it during the reception. Ambassador to Earth. Senior Council Advisor. You could write your own terms and demands. You could have real power and influence. They did offer me those things. And what did you say? I told them I am exactly where I want to be already. Juno smiled warmly. Besides, who else is going to keep you from accidentally setting the library on fire during your late-night study sessions? That was only one time. It was last week, Ruji. They sat together in comfortable silence as the 3 suns began their descent toward the horizon. From the palace behind them, the sounds of mixed laughter drifted on the evening breeze. Dragon children playing happily with crystalline students, all supervised by educators trained in the new methods that emphasized understanding over dominance. Years later, when Emperor Ruji addressed a unified galactic council from the throne his mother had passed him, he would begin every important speech the exact same way. They said humans were weak, insignificant, and beneath our notice. But the human who saved me did not need claws or fire or wings. He had something far better. He had patience, humor, and the courage to see a lonely child where others saw only a terrifying monster. And in the audience, now gray-haired and moving slower, but still proudly wearing his maintenance uniform by personal choice, Juno would sit beside a retired Queen Myri and feel a pride that had absolutely nothing to do with politics or power. He had saved one lonely child. That child had helped heal his broken heart. And together, they had changed an entire galaxy. Not bad for a simple janitor. The end.